Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining in the world. My name is Rob, and I'm thrilled to be joined by the wonderful Keith Nieves. Hello, Keith. How are you
Hey
doing?
everyone. It's going pretty good. How you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Excited to get stuck into all things Reddit. We have over 200 people signed up for this webinar, which is really exciting. And I can see that lots of people are joining as we speak. Now, I always like to reward the people who join on time, Keith, for a webinar. So here is your
Love it.
treat
Love it.
for joining on time, everyone. Your treat is, we're here to talk about Reddit and the importance of Reddit across the marketing funnel, the importance of Reddit for brands. So I have had access to some yet to be published primary research from a London university. That sounds quite shady how I got access to that. I just know the person who has told me this interesting tidbit from it, who happens to be one of the researchers on the project. So it's going to be published probably in about 6 months' time in a journal. But this was a project specifically looking at health misinformation on TikTok, actually. But one of the most fascinating things to come out of the focus groups was every single person pretty much was describing this customer journey through TikTok as, I see a product on TikTok, it looks really good, I'm interested in it, but straight away I go to Reddit to check what real people have said about using the product. And I think most of us are marketers on this call. For at the consideration layer in the purchase journey, Reddit is just becoming more and more important. But also, as we know, in discovery of new products and services, I'm sure everyone here is aware of the impact on LLMs and discoverability, but also in the post-purchase journey as well. So, support and where customers can come together and engage with other users and customers of products and services. And I think ultimately across that whole journey, Reddit is where real people are hanging out, right? And that is what is so magical about it, and where we're becoming more and more skeptical of what we're seeing on other channels as to whether it's AI generated, etc. The fact that this is where the real people hang out is ultimately what's the most important, and why obviously you and I, Keith, believe that everyone should be there and doing it in the right way. Thank you very much for listening to that anecdote, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, all the people who are on time. So we're going to get started now. Let me do some housekeeping. So you will see in this platform, if you've not used it before, very grateful to our partners at Gradual for providing the platform here today. You'll see a chat on the right-hand side that is the same as any chat you've used in any other webinar platform. You'll see a Q&A. I'm hoping that around half of this call will be answering your questions. So please do put them in now, and then the team will surface them later. I'm expecting to interview Keith for about 30 to maybe 35 minutes, leaving the rest of the time for questions. So please do get your questions in. There's a poll feature, and I'm going to set a poll live now. Let's see how this goes. Some of you won't be able to reply to the poll if you've not set up your profile, apparently. So just answer in the chat. I'm interested to see how you would rate your Reddit knowledge, just to give Keith and I an idea. Whether you think you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, quite rudimentary. This isn't very scientific. This isn't the London University research, Keith. You'll be relieved to know. So while you're zero, says Rachel. Okay, good, good. You're in the right place. You're in the right place. So who am I and why am I here? I'm from Standing on Giants. If you haven't heard of Standing on Giants, we are a specialist community management consultancy and agency. We're very privileged to work with some amazing clients across the world, both big names like Airbnb, Lenovo, and of course Sonos, and challengers and scalers as well. And increasingly, more and more of my time is spent talking to businesses and brands about Reddit, because of course it is incredibly relevant to building communities. Enough about me though. Let's get on to Sonos and the wonderful Keith. Keith is the head of global communities at Sonos, and is, I think, really is the GOAT of how you build a brand presence on Reddit. We're very lucky to have him here today. So you'll notice at the bottom, everyone, there's an emoji kind of function. Can you please bash that emoji function to show the appreciation for Keith right now? Thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Great. So, Keith, are you ready?
Yeah, let's get it. Let's get into it. Love it.
Let's do it. Fantastic. So we're going to organize this interview past, present, and future. So we're going to go back to the beginning of you working, working on Sonos and bringing them onto Reddit, and then through to what we think the future holds. So take us back to when you first brought Sonos onto Reddit, and I think in particular the decision to be Keith from Sonos, not Sonos official or whatever the options might have been. Talk to us about those very early days.
For sure. So I'll set the table with kind of how things came to be, and then I'll get into the details of where Keith from Sonos kind of came from. So the whole opportunity of Sonos being on Reddit actually came from the subreddit itself. The subreddit admin, the person who created the sub 13 years prior to this moment, actually reached out to our CEO and was actually asking for engineers to be in the subreddit. And the CEO was like, cool, but maybe not engineers. Let me see what I can do, essentially. So opened up a rec. And really there was a bit of conversation about, is this more of a marketing function? Is this more care? Where should this position sit? And ultimately they landed on it being in the customer care function, customer experience. That's when the opportunity came up. So at this time, I had worked at Sonos from 2017 to 2019 doing care and working the community forums way back in the day when it was incited, pre-Gainsight. And yeah, so when I was working community, I had said, tried to put the bug in people's ear, like, hey, we should be on Reddit. Like, as a Redditor myself, I was like, I see a lot of opportunity here, but we were just still kind of getting our feet under ourselves in our own, forum section. So it was just serendipitous that I happened to be on like a holiday break and cruising on LinkedIn, and Dita, shout out to Dita, posted the opening for community manager for Reddit. And I was like, stars align, perfect moment, right? Like, this is what I've been talking about, and now they're asking for it. So applied for it, came back pretty much to the same team that I left when I left Sonos in 2019. So at that moment, it's so funny. Once I got the role and signed the offer, I immediately went to Reddit and parked the name Keith from Sonos. It was just, I didn't have a conversation with anybody or anything else like that, but it was within the interview process. It was something that I was talking to Todd Christensen about, the hiring manager. And he was like, do you think that it should be, Sonos as a brand, or, you as someone from Sonos? And immediately the first thing that came to mind was, when I first joined Sonos, the magic of Sonos was talking to someone on the phone, because that was my entry into Sonos, right? It was being a tech support agent. So the idea of bringing that energy, right? The person you talk to on the phone that like is a person, not necessarily the brand, right? And I was the worst tech support agent. My calls were like hour and a half long, because I'd be like, let's make sure it works. What's your favorite album? Let's go listen to that and make sure it works properly, right? So bringing that type of energy, right? And I felt like as a Redditor and as kind of like a brand ambassador, that was the angle to really kind of take in that moment. So yeah, at that point, once I got in, it was more of like, there's no conversation of, is this going to be Sonos official or Keith from Sonos? It's going to be Keith from Sonos. Because I'm writing that strategy, actually. So, and luckily, I had the leadership to kind of give me that space. Like they were very much of the space of like, you're the expert. We hired you because you are the Reddit person. You come up with the strategy. You come up with the metrics, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully there's some ROI in this. Go build community, whatever that means. But yeah, very, very thankful to be given that space for sure.
When heck did they get ROI? Goodness me, what a good decision from them. But I think there's a couple of really interesting things in what you said there, which I'm hearing a lot, which is Reddit is seen as such its own space and its own culture that I think there's sort of almost a two-sided coin there, where if a brand decides to do it, they're more happy to give an expert the reins, because they're more happy to say, do you know what, I know nothing about this, you do. But then also the other side of that is they're far more kind of risk averse to get started in the first place, because they don't have that expertise, right?
Yeah.
And I love that the story is basically you just decided, and that's why KeithFromSonos was a real thing. Now you've decided, exactly, confidence, and now you've kind of defined an industry best practice. Do you think? I mean, just on that, do you still think that that's the right way for kind of any brand moving on to Reddit, that you have an identifiable person as opposed to a kind of more faceless, but an official brand account?
For sure. Maybe this is the musician in me kind of speaking, but like, you got to know the rules to break the rules. And I don't think that there's like any, you have to do this to get success, right? I think it's a safe bet to be yourself, because I think that's an opportunity to be vulnerable. And people are attracted to being to that vulnerability, right? Knowing what you can offer, when you can offer, and whatever is outside of that is just outside of that, right? At the same time, there are like other brands, that excel and do crazy good, engagement as a brand itself. They're not doing the personal touch kind of thing. But it's different strokes, different folks. You have to know your community. What's your place in that space? You know what I mean? If you're Cheez-Its, do you really need to have a personal, Sean from Cheez-Its or whatever, Nabisco? Is that necessary? Probably not, right? But when we're talking about a personal item, technical item that, or a product that people need to, when it's not working, it's very obvious and it's, kind of frustrating. That personal, angle certainly helps. Again, kind of rewinding back to the tech support days, right? You want to talk to a person, right? And so it depends on what your product is, what your industry is, what you're trying to do, right? But I think there's space for both, for sure.
Great. And for those that don't know, Keith with this subreddit is like famous. Like they ask where he's gone when he's not posted for a few days. Like they're very reliant. So I think there's a question I'll ask you a bit later, actually, I think in a later section around with that personal approach, how do you approach scaling? And I think we'll come to that later, because I think that's always the challenge with the personal touch. So we're now, the uncomfortable bit, it's coming, Keith. So there was a moment. So you'd got this job, dream job.
Yeah.
You're in there having a lovely time with your wonderful Sonos users. And then there was a moment that really put you on the map for both right and wrong reasons. And you've described it as both kind of the luckiest thing that happened and almost the unluckiest. So tell us about that. Tell us what happened at that moment.
Yeah. So I'd been in the community for maybe just under a year or so, building, as much social credit and like good guy energy as I could. Right. And we, new app update comes out and it's going to like change everything. And we're like so excited about it. The app goes out and it's just,
it wasn't well received.
It wasn't well received. That's putting it lightly. Yeah, totally. And so in that moment, right, like for me, I kind of had like a flashback, time rewind moment where, I went back to tech support, Keith, right? And it was like, okay, what do these people really need in this moment, right? I can't fix the app. I can't do all these other things, but like what I can do is I have the connections to talk to the team. I can find out what's at the top of mind, what's getting fixed, when is it getting fixed, and I can relay that information, and I can just be the conduit between the users and the team at Sonos. So I was kind of just like in crisis mode. I think as a lot of other folks were, honestly, like just like trying to keep it all together. And we tried a couple different things. It's so wild. About a month before this happened, I just started a regular office hours, or AMA, essentially, where I was like, hey, instead of you having to find me in the comments, here's a dedicated space where you can find me always. Final Friday of every month, I'll be here. I'll post the topic ahead of time. Hit me with your questions, or you want to meme on Sonos, you want to just, joke around. Cool. I'm down with that too. Right. But I just want to say that I'm here for you. Right. And so, we do our first inaugural one of that. I'm like, awesome. This is great. We're setting up for the second one. This app update comes out, and I'm just like, oh no, like that
this one's going to be busy.
Yeah. That GIF from Community where Donald Glover comes in with the pizzas and everything's like on fire. That's what it felt like. And so Todd, my manager at the time, was like, are you sure you like want to do this? And I was like, you have to. I can't not do this. If I don't do this, now that I've started it and said, oh yeah, I'm coming back next month, blah, 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 right? Like, I can't go back on that promise. If I do that, that alone is going to say something. So I have to show up, regardless how it's going to be. And honestly, I don't have anything to hide. You know what I mean? Like, I'm the social media guy, right? I didn't make the app, but I can at least be your champion as the user and customer, right? And so that was the kind of angle that I really wanted to take and bring to the sub. And through that, and also we brought up a Trello board, which is actually an artifact from when I left Sonos back in 2019. I worked in the video game industry, and in the video game industry, change management generally is handled through like a Trello board. Here's what people are reporting. Here's what's on the way, and here's what's been fixed, right? And so I had brought that up to Patrick, our CEO at the time. I was like, hey, I was just bouncing this idea off other folks in my team about doing a Trello board. We did this for Call of Duty and a couple other games that I worked on. So like, what do you think? And he was like, how quickly can you get it up? I'm like, I actually have a working prototype right now. He's like, cool, ship it. So I did that, and lo and behold, shortly thereafter, I had folks from the product team that were like, yo, what are you doing? What is this? So had to kind of reset some expectations and kind of, get some buy-in last minute. But these are the types of things, right, that in the moment for me, I was just kind of reacting and trying to do what was best from the boots on the ground perspective. And I had no idea that it was like, that other companies were watching or anything else like that. It wasn't until like, Rachel Carton wrote link in bio. She wanted to have me do like an interview for that. And that's when I was like, whoa, that's cool. You don't realize what you're doing until someone like taps you on the shoulder and they're like, hey, like you're actually killing it right now. So yeah.
And there was part of that crisis mode that gave more freedom to just do like really authentic community engagement that would normally be a bit more guarded or go through layers of legal or whatever. That was the time that we started working together, and I would say essentially took a similar approach that you were taking on Reddit on social, because and just trying to give authentic answers, real answers as to what was going on, transparent, bring the transparency. And then together, we turned that sentiment around, along with the product team, of course, who solved the issue. I wanted to ask you about this because I often see that when things go wrong, but then you fix it, the trust is deeper at the end. Do you feel that now, that actually there's almost a kind of a value to the way that the problem was solved now?
Big agree. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, and the thing is with Reddit, as a whole, if you look at it, you zoom out, there are definitely those who love to hold grudges, right? We are 2 years past this situation, the app update, and there are people who are like, remember when Sonos did this? Pepperidge Farm remembers, like that kind of stuff. And it's like, all right, like I get it. We're beyond that now, right? Not to turn a blind eye to the impact that had, right? But the idea is, you know, the team has certainly changed the way that we communicate, and you've seen that, right? Like I feel like when you look at the sub now versus when it was at the height of the moment and a little bit before, we have more what I would feel brand defenders now. And I think a part of that comes from that personal angle too, right? You know, it's part of like seeing Keith from Sonos and the rest of the team now, right? Like they see that these are just people, just like you and me. You know what I mean? And you know, they're here, unlike other brands, willing to give you an insight and provide, you know, a little bit extra value and context of what's going on. So it empowers the community to kind of fend for itself in its own way. It's been pretty cool to see in some instances.
Yeah, and the power of that when more and more of the other channels are getting automated and kind of LLM'd, which, you know, I'm not against that in a kind of support context. I think if an LLM can solve your problem really quickly, great, you know. But I think that's really interesting what you said about now you have more brand defenders because they saw that human approach on Reddit, which is where the humans go. I'm going to ask one more question about the past, and then we're going to move on to the present and future, conscious of time. So when the new CEO Tom took over, the first place he decided to go was Reddit, right? And you told me that but before he did, he checked with you what he was gonna post. So what was that like? But then also, what do you think generally? I think for our audience who are watching us about kind of executive engagement on Reddit and how to manage that, and how valuable can it be?
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'll take the first part about Tom coming to me. That's probably one of my like highlight career moments for me, just because like it's one thing when you spend a lot of your time, you know, plugging holes, talking to program managers and product managers. But then to have like the CEO come into your DMs and be like, "Hey, I want to post something on Reddit. Is this okay? Can you read through this?" I was like, "Whoa!" Like CEOs coming to me, like it shows like a sort of respect for my understanding of the community of the platform, and that just made me that gassed me up. Like I was on cloud nine for a while after that. And I think, you know, Tom knows that anytime he engages now, he'll touch base with me. And I really am super appreciative to have a CEO that is that leaned in on the platform and wanting to engage with our users, but B, like being protective of what we've built in that space already, right? So going on to, you know, just executive engagement, right? You know, historically Reddit isn't kind to CEOs. So we're in an interesting position now where, you know, I've kind of set the table for how the brand engages, and Tom being in there at very key moments really gives us the ability to peel the curtain back and give Tom the ability to speak to folks in a trusted area, right? And what's great about it is it's community owned and run, right? It's not our place, it's their place that we're guests in. And so with that, I will always, anytime Tom wants to post, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, post, like get in there. The more engagement, the better, because we're very lucky to have, again, that space to do that. At the same time, you know, working with any kind of senior leadership, sometimes it's a little, you know, you got to be flexible with what you want to say, what your content, you know, pipeline is looking like, or your content calendar is looking like, and what, you know, senior leadership wants to say. But that's just the nature of the game, honestly, right? And that's what we do in social and community, is being flexible. So it's one of those things that I love it, and I'm very thankful and lucky to have that buy-in. So
Absolutely, yeah, of course, of course. We had one story. This was on an old school forum community, one client, and we were trying to convince the CEO that he should do what is essentially an AMA called a community spotlight in this world. And he was so reticent to do it, but then he did do it, and he actually just started crying from the responses that he got back in a good way, not in a bad
Yeah,
way.
yeah,
Yeah, in a good way, like
yeah,
seeing all these people that really did believe in the brand that he'd built, right? And that they were willing to talk to him. I actually wanted to, you know.
yeah.
Absolutely right. Let's move on to the present then. And I'm aware we have quite a few beginners on the call, so I want to give them some Reddit 101. So quickly explain, what is a subreddit moderator, and how do you ongoing manage the relationships with your mods in the Sonos community, and
Yeah,
how do
yeah.
they interact with your team who are helping you manage everything on there?
Yeah. So honestly, we take a pretty hands-off approach, right? The idea is that the subreddit moderators are the ones that keep the peace. That are the content. Does this match our standards of what we want to see in the community? I've used the analogy of us as team from Sonos. We're just guests at the cafe. We're not the bar backs. We're not keeping the lights on or anything like that. We're just hanging out just like everybody else, and we'll be like eavesdropping a little bit to see like where we can pop in and be like, hey, check this out, or we can provide more context or insight here. But ultimately, we want to keep it as community run and owned as possible. Big Western Man and Crimson Major, those are the two moderators of the sub of our Sonos. I have semi-regular Zoom calls with Big Western Man. It's so funny. In the very first couple of meetings that we had, I was like, "Hey, do you want to set up like a monthly like Zoom call or something like that so we can just keep touching base?" And he's like, I have a job and a family. I don't need another job. And I was like, I get it. I get it. This is your fun thing. For me, this is a job thing. So like, I get it. Let's just keep it to emails, right? We'll keep it to emails. We'll Zoom when it's necessary, right? And so for a while, because it was just me, Keith from Sonos doing my thing on the sub, every so often I would just touch base with Big Western Man. Ben is his name. And he's from the UK.
Oh, outed.
Big,
outed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
he
know,
says
right?
UK.
Yeah, Big Western Man, UK. All right. Anyway, but yeah, touching base with Ben at the beginning, it was just Ben and it was just me. So like, especially at the height of the app update and other things like that, it was like, hey, are you okay? Like, is there anything I can do to help you or anything else like that? And no doubt, like we'll try to hook them up. Ben and Matt is Crimson Major. We hook them both up with like some swag when we can, or like during the holidays, we'll send them a player or something like that. Just a gift, a thank you, right? The reality is when we came to the sub, they are the ones that started it up and had it run for like 12 to 13 years before we showed up, right? They're the original architects. And when I had my first meeting with Ben, I told him, and I remind him this pretty frequently, that he's my number one stakeholder, right? If I don't, help and facilitate this relationship, or allow it to grow, I lose my job. Yes, I have managers and so on and so forth, right? But like this connection from me to you and ultimately to the users, that's the goal. If I don't have this connection, I don't have anything. So you're my number one stakeholder, right? And I really make sure that he and Matt both like understand that and know that I'm here to serve them ultimately, and no doubt the rest of the community. But if they say, hey, we love X, Y, and Z, cool. Let me see how I can make that happen, right? They say jump. Generally, I say how high, unless they're like, give me a whole home theater setup. All right, calm down. But yeah.
It's very powerful what you've just said, Keith, and I think actually goes to the root of when those of us who, most of us here, marketers, brand guardians, when thinking about Reddit, probably the number one thing that's so different compared to our other channels is the role of the moderator. So, as just to be clear for everyone, so these are all volunteers. Like, you cannot pay them. They're not allowed to be paid. That violates Reddit's terms of service. So you can reward them, like Keith is describing. But then the sort of the number one thing that you do when you go onto the platform, after you've done some listening and identified where might be good for your brand and the role you could play, this is the first thing you need to do. You need to establish these relationships, and as Keith has so eloquently said, in a gentle way, with giving more than you take, really, because they're the ones who are owning this space and know how to activate your presence in the best way, right? They'll know, they'll tell you, right?
Absolutely.
Nice. So you use this term two-way bridge for Reddit. Can you describe to us what the two-way bridge is and why we should care about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is something I typically bring up when we're talking about like how do I bring anything back to the company, right? Like, it's cool that we can talk to people, but like, what does the company get in return for just even being in the space? And so what I built, the Reddit program on is this two-way bridge, right? Well, on one lane, we have communications going out, right? Whether that be support, help, troubleshooting, marketing. Hey, we have this, this sale coming up. Check out this, or this new product announcement. Check that out. There's also a stream of communication coming back, and it's all the comments that we see there, right? We can't ignore that. Ultimately, we need to take all that, put together, feedback reports, sentiment. I try to stay away from sentiment scores and get a little bit more into verbatims, and using upvotes as a way to kind of increase the weight of those verbatims. So, like, if folks are saying, I'm having trouble with this, or I wish this product had that. Cool. It's great to hear that on one thing. If I see 20, 30 upvotes on it, huge. I need to be paying attention to that, right? And not only do I need to be paying attention to that, but I need to put this together in a report and bring this to our hardware team, our software team, our beta team, whoever will listen to it, honestly. But the idea is to take the feedback and everything that we're hearing in that space, and then turn that into something that the company and the teams can use and say, hey, check this out. People are talking about the products, and particularly the stuff that you were working on, and this is what they're saying. Take it or leave it. That's up to you and the team and the project managers to determine what's prioritized and when. I'm not going to tell you that. I'm just letting you know, as a temperature check, this is where people are at right now. And that's been really helpful, right? And that's what's got me, from before, when it was, just starting off on Reddit, I was kind of just grasping at straws of how to report and how to bring it to the appropriate teams. I was reporting it to my team, the customer experience team. But now post app update, I'm getting invited to hardware shipping meetings, to app update meetings, to software, release meetings and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, how are things going on Reddit? And it's cool to now be involved across the whole gamut of things that we offer, right? That folks are listening, and that's a integral part of our product creation and our sustaining development.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that is the summary of what a really great community lead should be doing, or a Reddit lead should be doing, is getting into all those conversations, giving that feedback, and then taking it back. So what's the first question you get asked by brands who come to you and go, Keith, what you're doing is amazing, but maybe I don't know where to start? What do they typically ask you, and what are the common pitfalls that they that you would want them to avoid?
Yeah. Hmm. The first, and I've seen it in some fashion in the Q&A pop up on the side here. So maybe this will be kind of like a quick dip into that.
Okay.
One thing I've had asked in a few places is, how do I get buy-in? And that's a tough one because, like I said, I came in and the CEO was already looking for someone with Reddit, right? But just because you have CEO buy-in doesn't mean that you have like everyone else's buy-in and understanding of why we're there, what's going on, or anything else like that, right? So it's a little bit of that, getting buy-in for that, and also how do I even start, right? And so what I'll say, the buy-in sector, the buy-in part usually means you have to prove it before you try to explain it. Because typically, when I try to explain Reddit to someone who just doesn't understand Reddit, they're not of that space or anything like that. Eyes glaze over, upvote ratio percentages, too much. So you have to show them, and that is the start of that two-way bridge, right? If you're not engaging, you're listening, and so this is where you can start pulling things in from subreddits. You don't need permission to listen. You don't need permission to go into Reddit and build a report out of what are people saying about this product, offering or category, and then provide that to your team or anything else like that. And that's actually leading right into how do I even begin? Should the first step be let's create our first our company subreddit? And I would say no. Do not create your own company subreddit. The idea is to not own the conversation, but rather to be a part of the conversation, to participate in that conversation. The idea is, providing value and augmenting the experience in that space. Being a one thing I've shared in a couple of my talks is, you know, as a brand ambassador and representative, we have like a duty to clarify, to provide context, and to provide value. And that's such a unique and powerful thing in Reddit specifically, because everybody loves upvotes. Everybody wants to be right. Everybody's got an opinion, right? But the idea is like you have the keys, you have the goods. You can bring it to that conversation and say, actually, this is how this product is made, or this is the process that we took to get to where we are now. And there's no one who can refute that because you're the expert. You're actually the person who's doing the thing. So I think, you know, with that, there's so many conversations happening across Reddit in so many different pockets. We're getting into the kind of future stuff, so I'll hold off here. But there are spaces outside of our Sonos that we're looking at that would be seemingly not related, you know, tangentially related, right? But we still have an opportunity to provide value there. So, and it might not be in the same, like, this is how to fix your speakers or whatever. It may be someone talking about their Sonos speaker in r/hip hop. Cool. There's a awesome opportunity that we can engage. It doesn't have to be, you know, driven to sales or anything like that, but just participating, being a part of that larger community is ideal. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you teed us up for future. I'm conscious of the time, and we've got loads of questions. So yeah. I will just say, what are the top? Give us a sort of a 1-minute summary of what you're looking to in the next couple of years for Reddit, but also the surrounding kind of strategy for Sonos.
Yeah, absolutely. So the global communities vision has certainly expanded. Now global communities. The idea is Reddit is our widest part of the funnel, right? We've struck gold given the situation, and we have a lovely community in our Sonos, and we're branching that out even further with other subreddits like commercial AV and looking at other music genres and other ways that we can engage in the space without just being tied into our Sonos. But that's the widest part of the funnel. It's our widest reach, right? The next section in is our global community forum. So the old school forums, so great though with Gainsight. They're turning things into a flavor of Reddit in a way. There's really great things coming out, like threaded replies, GIF responses. There's even like an iteration thing that people can upvote ideas. So there's kind of like this Reddit-esque kind of vibe that's coming along, that I'm really excited to kind of implement and kind of give our community forums a little bit of a facelift in the coming months. And then, when we think like years down the line, right? For me, back in the day when I was on the forums and I was like, we need to be on Reddit. Now I'm like, we need to be on Discord. And luckily, now that I'm like saying this to leadership here, they're like, okay, cool. And I told them like, we need to like crush it with Reddit and community forums. When we can do those two and link them and those experiences together, and we absolutely, knock it out of the park with those two community experiences, the next layer, the bottom part of that funnel where you are like right up with the brand, that's where Discord lives. That's where I see, calls with Tom, like, video streaming that we do from the studio, or not from the studio, but from the office, from the product labs, or really super cool opportunities to do some really intimate things. And then of course, in-person events, right? Like in-person events are definitely, the pie in the sky. Love to do those whenever we get the opportunity. But yeah, that's the kind of funnel vision. Yeah.
Brilliant, Keith. I'll host the Reading UK Sonos meetup for
Let's
you.
Go.
Promise.
Yes.
Let's go. Part of the in-person. We've got loads of questions. But I wanted to flag what you said about Discord actually. Quick, for those of you here, hit an emoji if you would like us to do a webinar in the next few months on Discord as well. Because, oh yeah, here they come. Yeah, great, nice. So normally the platforms get lumped in together. They're quite different in how you approach them. But I think that is the other kind of hot platform at the minute. Let's get into questions. Thank you so much to everyone who's submitted one. Some tricky ones here, Keith. So hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, first, let's go with Nate. How do you navigate building your presence on subreddits that do not allow branded accounts or usernames, even when you're not necessarily trying to push products or services?
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting one. My first, area or vector of approach when it comes to looking at other subreddits is I just talk directly to the people who run it, to the moderators and admins. When you go to the sub page, right on the right, you'll have a list of all the moderators. One of them might be tagged admin. It's helpful to just message them directly, and just say, hey, things are different for me, right? I've built this kind of persona on Reddit, but for me, I go like, I'll reach out to them like, hey, I'm Keith from Sonos, obviously from my username, but you can see my work over here. This is what I bring to communities. I would love to just participate and just be here. I'm not trying to sell. I'll follow all your rules that you have here. No marketing, no nothing like that. I just want to be a part of the community. Is that okay? And start much like what I was saying earlier about the admins and the moderators being your number one stakeholder. They have to give you the keys to the kingdom. To your point, they're the ones that allow or disallow you to be in that space. So by going to them first and saying like, hey, I want to participate here, it helps to grease the wheels a little bit. Like say, hey, I love what you've built here. I see you've done this for 7 years, 8 years. It's been really cool to watch this grow. I'd love to be a part of this and maybe add a little more. Go from there and try things out. That's probably the best avenue, I'd say.
Awesome advice. And again, I think for us marketers, is such a different mindset to ask for permission. We're used to being able to essentially just pay to be in a space, right? Or to be able to put stuff out there into a space, without having to ask. So it's an important lesson, I think. So Laura asks, I see that Sonos has our Sonos. Is that where you post and comment, or do you browse the platform for relevant conversations and jump in? You mentioned this earlier. For a small or lesser known company, will posts from their subreddits be seen by anyone?
Great
Or
question.
will they be seen by anyone? I think was the internality. So like, if you're there posting, are they going to be seen by anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that Reddit works, if someone browses similar subreddits, they might see it, right? But more often than not, those subreddits are kind of like little pockets within Reddit. So, for instance, I recently was checking out United Airlines subreddit. I met up with their head of social, and we were looking at Reddit and whatnot. Um, and then, like the next day, um, Delta's subreddit appeared on my home feed. So,
Classic.
like, I
Yeah.
never went there, right? But there, it was like much like you would see like on Instagram or other social feeds. You saw this, so maybe you might be interested in this, and it picked a conversation that was happening there. So it is possible that if you post only in that one sub, that it might be seen by others, right? Um, as for me specifically, currently, all of our attention is on our Sonos. We've seen that as kind of like they're the ones that invited us in. We have an obligation to be there, to be present, and to post, right, and to be available. That said, like I was saying earlier, we're looking at engaging in other spaces. For context, earlier I said commercial AV. I had actually reached out to the admins of commercial AV first, and I was like, "Hey, you may have seen me over at our Sonos. Um, I come to you bearing the flag of user research. Our user research team wants to learn more about people who install AV for commercial or residential or whatever, and so I would love to be able to be the conduit between our user research team and your community that you've built. I promise I won't be selling anything or anything else like that, but it's a learning type mission that we're going on here." And they were open to it. We started conversations, and then the app update thing happened, and then everything just got like paused. And we'll get back to that, right? But the idea is, absolutely spread out, right? Get out there, and in some cases, when you don't have your own R Sonos or your own like perfect garden, you have to just kind of do it guerrilla style and just go out there and see where are the opportunities. There's a bit more hunting rather than you have a home base that you can always go to and kind of have upkept. So.
Absolutely, yeah. But don't end up astroturfing. That will get you banned. It's one of my favorite Reddit terms, astroturfing. AstroTurf is fake grass, so it's imitating a grassroots movement, and that is when unscrupulous actors will mention like seed mentions of brands in subreddits from to kind of boost their AEO, etc. But I'd tell you, the mods are wise to it now, and
Yeah.
Reddit's getting hotter on it now, so it's just not worth it, really.
No.
This is a great question from Patricia. From your experience, do you see technology leaders involved in buying B2B tools use Reddit to validate vendors or products before making a decision? If so, what kind of Reddit strategy would you recommend for a company trying to reach that audience? I mean, the first thing I would say, Patricia, is that I think, while Keith is thinking, I'm just like, I think all buyers of pretty much all products are now starting to use Reddit to validate options. Whatever your industry, I think you can find those recommendations, right, Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually really interesting. At the end of the day, whether you're working for a business or you own a business, you're still a person at the end of the day, and you probably still end up on Reddit looking at, oh, what is this tool, and how does this person use the tool, or how did this business work out with this specific tool? So it's almost a very interesting angle that like you don't have to do anything really different in terms of engaging with that. I mean, there is some uh, you know things to keep in mind and considerations to have when we're talking about business to business solutions versus straight business to consumer or DTC type things. But at the end of the day, right, folks are looking at Reddit for efficacy of a particular tool. And a lot of times that requires someone to demystify that tool or understand how it works or how to get the most out of that tool. And I think that's a unique space that folks who are in that space and are representatives of that brand or of that tool, right, can be like, hey, let me show you. Actually, here's a video or a GIF or something like that can kind of explain, or we're using other channels perhaps to give more context, right? Because at the end of the day, and we've seen this on Google, people will search what they search for and add Reddit at the end of it, right? Because they're looking for answers, and so your ability to provide that value remains the same. Again, whether it's DTC, B2B, whoever, everyone's looking for answers. And as those brand ambassadors and professionals, like, that's what we do in that space. It's how you do it and how how you serve that on that plate. But at the end of the day, it's all giving context.
Absolutely. All right. Next question from Valencia. Thank you for your question. We know that AI databases, LLMs, tap into Reddit for information. If you were managing a brand like Sonos, which you are, would you use Reddit as a data source? And how would you actually go about implementing that? So I suppose there's two parts of that question, like the importance of Reddit for AEO, GEO, whatever you call it, but then also how you use the Reddit data yourselves, and how do you do that?
Yeah. So going to the importance of Reddit in AEO, GEO, and a common question I get with that also is like, how do you optimize for that? And I feel like things change so often with LLMs and AI that it's going to always be a moving target. And so the idea is to not focus too much on appeasing the AI or LLMs or whoever. Appease to the users, right? Because at the end of the day, if your content is valuable and trusted and at the end of the day upvoted, that's where the LLM is going to be looking. You need to have trust. You need to have the value that you're bringing to the space. If you have that, the AI and the LLM, that's on the other side of the equal sign. That will come, right? I'm very lucky that I had some time in the space before a lot of this LLM Reddit connection was happening. So once that was happening and starting to build, we didn't really have to do much, content push or anything else like that to try and seed the LLMs or anything like that. We were already there and we were already uploaded and trusted, right? And so, yeah, when it comes to engaging with AEO, GEO, and like LLMs, it's focus on that. Focus on providing value first, and that the other rest will come. How we use AI and Reddit, I actually use it, personally, as a way to get kind of like to read the subreddit and give me like its own take. Right? It's nothing beats waking up in the morning and getting a readout of what's gone on in the subreddit for the last 24 hours or over the weekend even, right? That gives me some time to have an actual weekend, which is nice, and I don't have to worry about what's going on in the sub. But that doesn't replace, right, like the actual time of me going through and reading. I know personally that the sub gets anywhere between 25 to 30 topics a day. That's doable, right? For me to go through and read through and just get a temperature check. Is everything okay? Yeah, cool. But using AI to kind of crunch that down, give me, specific, high-end topics or comments that might be worth, double clicking into and getting more context on. That's always super helpful, but I don't use it for much else than that.
Absolutely good. And I would say Valencia is get a Reddit Pro account as well, because then you can use Reddit's own feature that it's free. You might have one already. Yeah. You should have one. Yeah, because then you can essentially, a bit like on Google Search Console or a tool like that, you can put keywords in, and it will surface interesting insights for you. It's a nice tool, isn't it?
Yeah. One thing real quick about Reddit Pro, you can even type in your company name and it'll show your company's mentions across all of the the subreddits where those conversations are happening. So it's awesome. Reddit Pro is so clutch.
Very good. And for brands of any size, that's incredibly relevant, right? Jack has got just a beautifully specific question, right? Are you ready? Thank you for this one, Jack. At Sonos, you've built incredible trust as a single centralized community manager handle, Keith from Sonos. In our proposed strategy, we are weighing a family tree model using a central brand anchor alongside distinct human personas like product engineers or master techs. From your experience, does having one primary spokesperson create a cleaner single point of contact, or do you ever see the value in deploying specialist sub-handles for technical or niche discussions? How about that for a question?
Bravo, Jack. Love it. Yeah, big ups. All right, so Keith from Sonos was out of necessity, right? It was just one person, and I always wanted more people on my team because my inbox was just flooded, especially after the app thing. It was just like one after the other, and like it's hard to keep that together for one person. Not to mention Reddit's inbox is not built for like massive intake of questions and stuff like that. It's a lot. So we've moved on to a team. We're now a team of 5. We have, outside of the different from Sonos folks, right? You got Keith from Sonos, Adam from Sonos, Liz from Sonos, Sean from Sonos, Andrew from Sonos. So we've got the team of individual folks that are community managers, just like myself. But we also have the U/Sonos account, which is what we use to do ads. That's all we use that for. We also use that for special guests for our office hours or AMAs. If someone doesn't want to create a Reddit handle for whatever reason, that's okay. No one on Sonos should feel, obligated to create a user and get on Reddit and do the thing. If you don't want to, you don't have to. We have a branded user for that. We also have Team from Sonos, which is very similar. That one is very specific to the product team specifically. And so we have that. We also have an individual person from the product team who wanted to make their own username, Brock Lyons. And so he just came out in our most recent office hours, and it's been great. This has turned from community management and kind of plugging holes to some degree to now employee advocacy in a weird way, right? Like we now have Brock, we have the team that can go into Reddit and engage with folks, and they have their own side DMs if they would want to. I don't know if Brock does. I should probably check on that. But the idea though is you can build those separate, relationships, and that's the juice that we get from being in that space, right? And I think that's the angle, right? If we can have more authentic and real communications and connections within the community, that's where we need to be. So the idea, right? Family tree model, having one and then having different kind of niche, accounts for different parts. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a really good way to go, Jack. And so you can go back to your client with a blessing there from. That's great. We're nearly at the end. I think I'm going to ask one more question. This is the first webinar we've run on this platform. There's a sort of scary countdown that everyone can see at the bottom left. I don't know whether it's just going to end at the end time or whether it'll let us carry on. But if it does just end and we all go, thank you, everyone, because it's been wonderful. I'm going to ask this final question now. You will be sent a link to the recording afterwards, of course, as well. Really appreciate you all joining, and I hope it's been really, really interesting for you. Certainly has for me. Let's see if we get kicked out in 10 seconds. I'm going to ask this question, Keith. So Reddit communities are famously skeptical of corporate PR, especially from big brands like Sonos. There we go. Oh, there we go. It will continue until we choose to exit. There we go. We got the answer. Suck it and see. That's what it's about. Given how user-driven and anti-marketing Reddit can be, how do you build genuine trust there while still hitting your business goals? Yeah, that balance, I think, is a good point. We have tried on Facebook groups, but the users always look back on posts and highlight that I'm from a business and can't be trusted, and then report to the moderators. Oh man, Dylan, savage.
That's rough. That's rough. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I think, it's one thing, when I think about the moment that things kind of shifted from me being like the known shill on the subreddit to oh, actually he's a real person and like we should probably be like nice to him, was post the app update. And that's the tough thing, right? And this is something, thinking back to a previous question about like a lot of folks get into Reddit looking for like an immediate return on investment, and that's not going to happen. Like you can try your best again with the two-way bridge, pulling insights in, and that's great and all. But like you almost need to look at Reddit as kind of like an insurance policy, right? Like when things go wrong, and you've been there building community, rain or shine, providing value. When things go wrong, they're going to remember that. And the fact that you stay around and you stick around and you're still there, that's when you get the Keith for CEO comments. That's when you get the like, oh, there were layoffs at Sonos. Is Keith okay? Is he still here? Like,
that's my favorite one. That's my favorite one.
That's the gold. That's the gold, right? And so, it's tough, and it will be tough, right? But you just got to keep showing up. Not everything is going to be, I hate to use all American analogies. Not everything's going to be a home run, but you need to show up for your at-bats every time. And sometimes you'll strike out. Sometimes you'll get hit by the pitch. Sometimes you'll just get a single or a double. But like, you have to show up, and you just have to be there, right? And it'll come. It'll come. Your time will come. And in the meantime, you'll probably make some really cool friends and get to know the community and be a part of some inside jokes and stuff like that. Folks will go into your posts and say, yeah, you're from a brand. That might be a joke a year from now, 6 months from now. You don't know. You can't, I hate to quote Steve Jobs, but you can't, connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back, right? So you just got to have trust that this is where you need to be. This is where the customers are. And that you're providing the value, and then it'll come. Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm all about the analogies today for some reason. I don't know.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Well, and also I think I've got some further validation of what you're saying, because in terms of the time frame required. So even for those short-term results that I get it. We all need some short-term results, but even for those. So most answers that are surfaced from Reddit in those LLM summaries or Google search summaries, they're a year old, 6 months old. They've been there because they are surfaced because they're a validated answer from the community that's been there for a while. So if you haven't got in there, then you're not going to get the short-term AEO results, really, I don't think. The really valuable ones. And then on the second point, if you're going to start engaging, you need 3 months really of engaging in an authentic way on Reddit before you can be trusted enough to run something, like quite serious, like an AMA. You need to build up the karma, not in a fake way, of course. So it is, you need to get in yesterday and build slowly, right? and then build around that. We've run over time. I think we're going to call it a day there. Thank you so much. We've had most of the people stay on right till now.
Yes.
Keith,
thank you all.
Thank you so much for joining us, and the comments are great. Everyone's found it really fascinating, and I certainly have. Really appreciate you giving us our time. And I don't know, should we get Keith back for a follow-up?
Let's do it.
The emojis are going. Yeah. Keith's going to be like, my whole job can't be doing webinars with Rob. Like,
as lovely as they are. Yeah.
Podcast, Jack. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're
There we
talking.
go.
Now
Okay.
you're
Okay.
talking. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, you've already said you want a webinar on Discord. People will work on that. And actually, we are planning at Standing on Giants a series of webinars on Reddit. We're letting Keith have a break and bringing some other experts in as well. So look out for those. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Keith, and have a great evening or day wherever you are in the world, everyone. All right. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, y'all. Bye.